7 o'clock as well, Mr. Chair.
All right. Are we ready to go? We'll call the meeting to order since it's 7 o'clock.
Yes.
Roll call. I'm here. I see Kurt is on the line. Is Ezra out there?
Here.
Is Mark out there?
Mr. Chair, Mark is not here today.
Mark is not here. Okay. I saw Andrea's up on there. Laura?
Mr. Chair, Laura is also not attending today.
Okay. I think I saw Jenny's face on the thing here.
Hello.
Steve Lindus?
Yes, I'm gonna get myself unmuted. I'm here.
Helps, doesn't it? I've had that problem. Joel Hildebrand?
Mr. Chair, we did not hear from Joel.
Okay. For now, we'll say he's not here. Is Kurt here?
Kurt Shervin or Kurt Stubsted?
Oh, sure, but I saw your name. I jumped over you. I saw you on the screen. No, Stubsted. And Steve Mortensen?
I'm here.
Very good.
What?
Mr. Chair, was that Joel?
That was Joel, maybe Kurt.
Excuse me?
Looks like Joel Hildebrandt is now here, and Steve Mortensen is here as well.
That was funny.
Yeah, I heard Steve.
That wasn't Steve.
Okay.
Bill, did you hear me, Kurt Stubsted?
Oh, it was Kurt.
No, I didn't. Okay. Good to hear you, Kurt. So that's Laura and Mark. Roll call. And, we have everybody else that's recorded that's out there.
We just need 306-4694.
That's me. I've got the audio on the phone. It comes through better.
Who is that?
Kurt Stubsted.
It's Kurt?
It's Kurt
Okay.
Stubsted.
It's got
Yep.
one of each.
I
going
can,
on.
yep, I get one of each. Yep.
Okay.
All right, very good. The meeting rules, Matt will go over those for us, please.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everyone. This is the February Clay County Planning Commission meeting. I just want to go over a couple of quick procedural things before we get started. If you can, please mute your microphones unless you're directed to speak by the chair. If you're on a phone, you can mute that by hitting *6 and then *6 to unmute. Just a little bit about how each public hearing will go. Once the hearing is open, the chair will state the case to be heard. The chair will call upon the planning director, which is myself, to present a staff report. The planning commission will question staff about the proposal. The chair will direct the applicant to speak, and then members of the planning commission can question the applicant about the proposal. Members of the public shall be permitted to address the planning commission about the proposal. The time limit for each individual is 3 minutes, unless permitted by the chair or there's a vote by the planning commission to extend that. Any questions for me at all? All right, very good.
All right, approval of agenda. Has everybody got a copy of the agenda? And is there a motion to approve as presented?
Oh, Mr. Chair, it looks like there's, oh, I know what that is.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda. Ezra.
Ezra, is there a second?
Steve Mortensen, will second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye. Kurt Shervin?
Aye.
Ezra?
Aye.
Andrea?
Aye.
Jenny?
Aye.
Steve? Lindus?
Aye.
Joel?
Aye.
Kurt? Stubsted?
Aye. Aye.
Steve Mortensen?
Aye.
Motion carried. The agenda's been approved. Approval of minutes from January 26, 2021 meeting. Does everybody get a copy of those? Had a chance to read them, review them, and is there any corrections or changes that we need to be done, or is there a motion to approve as presented?
So move, Ezra.
Is there a second?
Second, the motion, Jenny.
Jenny's got a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Kurt Shervin,
Aye.
Ezra,
Aye.
Andrea,
Aye.
Jenny,
Aye.
Steve, Lindis,
Aye.
Joel,
Aye.
Kurt Stubsted,
Aye.
and Steve Mortensen.
Aye.
Minutes have been approved from January. Citizens to be heard. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak to the Planning Commission on something that is not on the agenda? Anything that is not on the agenda, citizens to be heard. Hearing none, let's go to public hearings. Continued from last month, Tribal LLC petition for text amendment to the Clay County Development Code. This public hearing is a continuation of the public hearing tabled on January 26, 2001. The applicant is petitioning for a text amendment to the Clay County Development Code to add service business and wholesale business warehousing and storage units as a conditional use in Chapter 5, Table 5-1 in the Urban Expansion Tier 1 zoning district.
Mr.
Is there a
Chair.
motion to open the public hearing?
Mr. Chair, this is Jenny Mojo. I'll make a motion to remove this item from the table so we can act on it.
Ezra will second.
You're removing it from the table?
Well, we tabled it, so we need to take it off the table in order to have the open hearing.
All right. All, you've got a motion in a second. Is there, all those in favor say aye. Kurt,
Aye.
Ezra,
Aye.
Andrea,
Aye.
Jenny,
Aye.
Steve, Lindis,
Aye.
Joel,
Aye.
Kurt, Stubsted,
Aye.
and Steve Mortensen.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. We're back open. We'll go to Matt for his input on this one, please. Matt?
I think, Mr. Chair, I think we would just need now a motion to open the public hearing.
Now we have to open. Okay, now we'll open the public hearing.
So move,
Is there a
Ezra.
motion? Who's this?
So move, Ezra. There needs to be a
Is there a
motion.
second?
Second, Kurt Shervin.
We've got a motion now to open it. Now, all those in favor say aye. Kurt Shervin,
Aye.
Ezra,
Aye.
Andrea,
Aye.
Jenny,
Aye.
Steve, Lindis,
Aye.
Joel Hildebrand,
Aye.
Kurt Stubsted,
Aye.
Steve Mortensen.
Aye.
All right, now the public hearing is open. I think. Matt, could you fill us in on what has transpired since last month?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this is a continuation of the petition for a text amendment to the Clay County Development Code. You had kind of read what that was. One thing I want to clarify before we go any further is we did do the facts of finding an order last month. They were kind of confusing, and the reason that they were confusing is because we were doing the facts of finding in order for a conditional use permit and not for a text amendment or a rezoning. Since we didn't make any decisions last month, consulted with our county attorneys, and we are good to go with doing the new facts of finding in order this month. So outcomes from the January 26th meeting, there was a motion to deny the text amendment that failed with a vote of 4 to 5. There's a motion to table the request, and that passed unanimously. And then under the Planning Commission direction, Clay County planning staff drafted a set of standards for service businesses in the Urban Expansion District Tier 1 that would be amenable with county and city comprehensive plans. Subsequently met with staff from the cities of Dilworth and Moorhead. They provided input, and we kind of came to a proposed set of standards that was agreeable to the county, city, and the cities. The applicant also would like to drop the request to add wholesale business, warehousing, and storage units as a conditional use in this zoning district, so would like to consider just removing that request from consideration and just focus on the service business. So on to the proposed service business standards. First thing we looked at was just what a definition of the service business is. And the proposal would be to have it be a retail business offering services rather than products as the primary business, not a major change from the current definition. A little more broad than the current definition. There's also discussion to change the permit type from a conditional use to an interim use for the urban expansion tier 1 zoning district, and then only having one interim use permitted per lot. The fundamental difference between a conditional use and an interim use permit being that an interim use could have some either triggering date or event that would require that permit to be, that would either terminate the permit and require it to be moved or to be renewed. So to the standards that were proposed and discussed through this collaborative planning effort with the city of Dilworth and the city of Moorhead, 9 standards. These standards are based off of the interim use home occupation standards. That's if you're, say, you have a business that you run out of your home. That's allowable as an interim use in this urban expansion tier 1 zoning district. So these standards are kind of based off of that. So the first one, limiting a service business to existing structures, putting a cap on the number of employees in order to best mitigate considerations for traffic, parking, and surrounding properties, allowing a sign, and then addressing issues with traffic and roads that would be addressed basically in the interim use permit application process. Having a performance standard for no equipment or processes used in the service business that should create noise, vibration, glare, fumes, odors, electrical interference detectable off the premises. Buffering, just a standard for buffering that may be required by the Planning Commission to minimize adverse effects on adjacent properties. Utilities, not creating any sort of usage that exceeds the capacity of on-site sewage treatment, drinking water. Parking, just a standard in there for the Planning Commission to consider how parking would be handled. And then inspections, service business permits should be reviewed and inspected every 5 years prior to, or just for compliance with conditions. So these standards were also shared with the applicant, and the applicant is agreeable to standards 3 and 9, but does have some concerns with standards 1 and 2. That's limiting the business to existing structures, and then 2, the number of employees that would be allowed. So just, there are some concerns from the applicant about those 2 standards. He's hoping to grow his business at this location. I've also heard from the neighboring business, Mud Pumpers Mud Jacking, that they're looking at, they would like to expand their current building so they can get some of their stuff that's stored outdoors, indoors. A couple things to consider about that is allowing an expansion or additional structures, particularly for service businesses. It might not be consistent with our current land development code. It also may be in conflict with our comprehensive plan and also with the comprehensive plans of the cities of Moorhead and Dilworth as well. And so just kind of recapping from our meeting last month, these are our policy considerations and goals from our comprehensive plan. particularly Land Use Goal 1, Policy 1, working with the cities and townships within Clay County to identify planned urban growth areas through this planning process. And Land Use Goal 4, encouraging new commercial and industrial developments that require public sewer and water to locate within the county cities. This service business is an example of something that does not require a public sewer connection. So policy number 2 would be more applicable here, encouraging commercial and industrial developments which do not need public sewer and water to locate within the planned urban growth areas in locations with adequate road service. And then kind of going off of this, with our land development code and our zoning map, which is tied to our land development code, is we originally had one urban expansion zoning district that was adopted in 2002. That was to promote orderly and efficient development around incorporated communities, provide communities with some degree of protection as expansion occurs. The idea being that eventually in the future, very near future to future, next 10 to 20 year time frame roughly, you might see these areas becoming part of the cities that they are adjacent to. And so the idea was to give the cities some degree of protection and degree of say in how development occurs around their communities. And this was further modified into 2 tiers, a tier 1 and a tier 2. So the tier 1 was closer to Moorhead, more restrictive in what types of uses are allowed. That tier 2 is much less restrictive in terms of what is allowed. And here's a map just to kind of show you, remind you again of what areas are tier 1 and what areas are tier 2. So the blue is tier 1, the purple is tier 2. And then again, looking at the city of Dilworth's comprehensive plan, their future land use map kind of shows where that subject property is. And on this map, the city of Dilworth, as they grow, would like to see that as low density residential. Just some considerations. Again, we had comments in favor and opposition received from the neighbors. We did have that collaborative planning process over the past month with the cities of Dilworth and Moorhead. They were satisfied with the proposed standards. The applicant has some concerns about those first 2 standards regarding the only allowing service businesses and existing structures, and then also the limiting the number of full-time equivalent employees as well. And the applicant is willing to drop his request for wholesale business, warehousing, and storage units. On our county use table, a service business is a separate use from wholesale business, warehousing, and storage units. The wholesale business, warehousing, and storage units are all considered under one use, so that's why they're all included here. I think the applicant was only looking originally at doing storage units and not wholesale business or warehousing or anything like that. But because they're all considered under the same use in our ordinance, that's why they were all included in this, or in the original request. Any questions for me at all?
Joel Hildebrand. So are we still looking at the text amendment request, or with the changes that everybody has mostly agreed to, are we able to stick with the existing zoning usage verbiage?
Mr. Chair and Joel, this would still have to be a text amendment request. Because right now a service business is not a permitted use in the urban expansion district, tier 1.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm gonna pop in there and ask you a question, Matt. So you're saying that you would take a text amendment to add this to the code.
Yes. And
And then afterwards, he would have to get an interim use permit besides?
that is correct.
All right. Anybody else have any questions for Matt at this time?
Matt, I have a question. This is Ezra. Does the county plan on looking at tier 1 and tier 2? Say you established that in 2018. Does the county plan on looking at that in 2028 and seeing if you didn't move that way, you're moving this way, maybe we should change that? Or is that 20-year time frame always just going to be extended down the road, 20 years, 20 years, 20 years? And Dilworth claims that they have tier 1 on that, but they have never moved towards that area.
So, Mr. Chair and Ezra, I'd say because development, a lot of development is developer-driven, and it happens when all the right circumstances come together. I think it would be, and I'm sure the cities of Dilworth and Moorhead would agree, I don't want to speak for them, but it would be prudent to review this, honestly, maybe even every 5 years, and just see how development is occurring, see what annexations are looking like, if there's anything on the imminent on the horizon, and just and that's one of the policies and the goals in our comprehensive plan is to continue to have that dialogue with the cities to make sure that we can always kind of keep a pulse on what's going on and if things need to change at all with respect to these zoning districts or any other type of development that's occurring kind of on the fringes of these communities.
Mr. Chair? This is Jenny. I would probably echo a little bit of what Matt has said. Our prior practice was maybe less active than we want. And so I think we want to be proactive in having continued conversations with cities as to what they're seeing, their growth areas are. And specifically important is, you know, when they've added some new schools, that tends to change some of the development that is happening in some of those tiers. And so I agree with you. I think that it needs to be a policy to have more frequent conversations about what we're seeing, the trends in terms of area to kind of tweak maybe what those tiers are looking like before it's, you know, all of a sudden here we have a huge development and we haven't even talked about it for 20 years. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mr. Chair, there could be an instance where, you know, the county or the one of the cities, Dilworth or Moorhead, makes an amendment to their own comprehensive plan or their own future land use map, and that would definitely be another opportunity to be involved and just informed on what changes are being made. And if there would need to be a subsequent change or update to our urban expansion districts as well.
Joe, this is Steve Lindas. So Matt, what I'm hearing is we don't have right now a process, but it would be good to put in place a process where we have a more consistent review of the different zoning, especially around the cities as things change.
So, Mr. Chair and Steve Lindas, that's kind of my understanding. Again, having only been here for 2 years, there could have been more of a formal process in the past. But that would be, you know, something that I would need to work with and collaborate with city staff and just making sure that we're having maybe more of a, it maybe not necessarily a formal process, but more of an informal check-in every, you know, 3 to 5 years or even as needed. So one thing I do want to say is I appreciate the staff from the cities of Moorhead and Dilworth and because this was almost sort of like an informal check-in where there was a development that occurred or is being proposed to occur, and it gave us the opportunity to all come together and sit down and kind of think through what the best possible solution would be for all the communities involved and for the landowner too.
Thank you.
You know, it seems like as cities grow, there's going to be more, there could be more conflicts with what's already existing there. And I think this is just an effort to try to address that proactively, I think. Wouldn't you say, Matt?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions for Matt? Anybody? This would be a time for the applicant to speak. Would the applicant like to address the commission at this time?
Yes, I'd just like to thank you all for your consideration, and we're just asking to use the property similar to how the prior owners have used it. We're not going to create any noise or pollution or extra traffic or anything like that. And again, we do appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions or comments to the applicant? Anybody on the board?
Yes, this is Steve, Mr. Chair, Steve Martinson.
Okay.
And I'd like to know, one of the questions there in number 2 was about full-time employees. And I was wondering how many employees the service would have.
Well, right now we have 3 full-time employees. We're looking to hire 1 more, but we would like to just grow at a steady rate. We don't want to be stopped short just because we can only have 10 guys. We offer really good jobs for people who don't always have good opportunities. And our business here in Litchfield, Minnesota, we have currently about 60 people. And we offer really good jobs, and we pay at a higher rate than most. And so we find that it really helps our community here. And I'm not saying that we're going to have 50, 60 people there, but I would like to grow at the standard rate of 5 to 10% a year and have the ability to do that. We do have 14 acres there surrounded by trees, and we're not going to bother anybody. So we have plenty of room for parking. We have our own septic system. We use very little water because it's just a toilet. People come in the morning and work out in the field all day, so they're not even on site. So I don't think we'll be any burden on utilities or traffic for that matter. But to answer your question, I'd say 5 to 10 years, we could have maybe 20 people in there.
One other question for you.
Yes, sir.
The building that's on site already, I believe that was what, 10,000 square feet?
Yes, it's a steel frame building, 10,000 square feet. Yep.
And again, on number 2 there, are you looking to want to expand that building?
Well, because we do have a lot of room there, we just like to have the option in the future in case we needed to park more trucks or equipment or tools or whatever. We just hate to not have the option to expand if we needed to, but it would probably be a long ways off.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Anybody on the commission have any other questions for Mr. Trable? Hearing none, I guess we'll go to other people to speak either for or against the proposal. Is there anyone out there that wants to speak for or against this proposal?
I do.
Please identify yourself.
Hi, I'm Julie Kennedy on neighboring property to the south of this property.
Okay.
And I would just like to comment that this all the properties around here were all residential prior to these businesses coming in. The comp plan that City of Dilworth put out and the county showed that it would be residential. Now we have a business coming in and trying to change our whole neighborhood, and without our input or our style. You know, this property is surrounded all the way but for the back side to the east by residential houses. And if he wants to add employees, you're looking at, say he adds 10, you got 20 now, you got mum pumpers, you got 20, you got 50 people going in and out of that site right in front of our houses. Also, you know, that's with, and I guess to get public input before these changes are made, instead of reading it in the paper that someone wants to change the comp plans. It would be nice that the public could have a meeting with the city and the county when these requests are being made, so we're all aware. That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments for or against?
I do, Mr. Chair. This is Peyton Mastera.
Okay, Peyton, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I have a few things jotted down here, and I'm with the City of Dilworth, and yeah, big shout out to Matt and with the City of Moorhead as well, and working together and coming up with what we felt was a good, solution to address kind of the needs of this zoning district. And with that said, I still feel like, just from my vantage, there's an intermingling here with this agenda item. This is about a text amendment to a zoning ordinance, not necessarily just this application. So I think all the commissioners need to keep that in mind. And so with that said, I know the applicant has some concerns with some of the limitations that we had put forth in working with Matt. So I'm just a little hazy on what the actual request is this evening, if it's what was originally presented, but the applicant doesn't want X, Y, and Z as part of it. So I was just wanting to make that point clear, that it's what Matt originally proposed to the group. And just to address some of the other comments that were made, cities, and Matt alluded to this, but cities don't do development. That's a developer-driven thing there. And the more that we take steps further away from what the land use goals are of the City of Dilworth, City of Moorhead, or the county, in this instance, the further away that you're going to meet those land use principles. And so when those limitations are set for employees, that's there for a reason, so we don't take further steps to get away. The more employees, for example, or the larger the building you make it, the more or the less likely it is that we're ever going to achieve those goals. And to push back on another comment too, about the city not actively looking to, or hasn't taken in that area. We'll talk annexation with anybody, any day, any time, and we're open to it. So I would guess some of the property owners don't want annexation because of the some added taxes and things that come along with that, and the fact that utilities are out there for some of the residential homes at this time, which was probably shouldn't have been done, but it was. So that's kind of spilled milk now. But I do want to, just reiterate our considerations and thank Matt and everybody for working together and coming up with what I feel is a pretty good solution for all parties involved, given what we originally had. And we'd love to meet periodically with the county and also the city to reevaluate land use goals as we go forward from here. But keeping in mind, this is a zoning district. It's not readdressing what the future land use map shows of the county or the cities. I don't think that's going to change necessarily. So I don't think you would just go back every handful of years and just arbitrarily change zoning around, because these were set, based upon the principles of what we set forth in our comprehensive plan as well. But we're always open to looking at those with Matt and whomever else with the county as needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
And I can answer any questions if y'all had any questions for me as well. Sorry about that.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Peyton? Well, I hear none. Thanks. Thank you, Peyton, for your comments here. Anybody else have any comments for or against the proposal?
Commissioner, or Mr. Chair, this is Jenny.
Yes.
I think I just want to clarify for the public that, yes, it is a text amendment that we're talking about here, but any future requests are still going to have to run through the planning department. I mean, so we're not talking about, he's got a 9,600 square foot building. We're not talking about adding a building or any of that with this discussion. I think it's, if you go to the documents provided, it's pretty clear what we're being asked to do. And I will agree, I think it's great to have input from all of the cities that may be affected in this. I think it's important. But I also feel that, if we don't have these conversations about what desires are, then we'll get in a point where what happened the last time we addressed this, and all of a sudden you have a city threatening to sue the other in the paper. But I think it's really important that in the middle of an economic crisis, we are also able to encourage growth, be it homes or businesses or whatever, obviously through a process, but Clay County needs to be fair and flexible in all the things we do. And I appreciate that we have residents wanting to build in the new development areas in Dilworth, and I also, other cities also appreciate that we have a business that's looking to grow in Clay County as well. So it is a tricky spot, but I think there is a way we can make something work.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments or questions for Matt yet, or the applicant? I'm going to throw it one more time. Does everybody understand what we're end up trying to do here now? And I would think, I'll ask Matt to go through and clarify that one more time. Would you do that, please, Matt?
Yes, absolutely, Mr. Chair. So the original request was for, to add a service business and wholesale business warehousing and storage units. These are two separate uses as conditional uses to the urban expansion Tier 1 zoning district. The applicant has since requested to drop the wholesale warehouse and storage units from his request and only consider the service business request. We have drafted a set of standards with working with the cities of Dilworth and Moorhead that are almost sort of a compromise that would allow these service businesses to operate on properties in this urban expansion Tier 1 zoning district, not just this property, but any other properties as well, so long as that they can meet the 9 standards that we're proposing.
Okay, I've got one question for you. I see Julie Kennedy has a question. We'll let her ask hers first. Julie, do you have a question? See a hand up? No? Okay.
I think Mr.
Since it came up,
Mascara has
how did you come? What's that?
Mr. Chair, I think Mr. Mascara has a question or a clarifying comment.
Oh, okay. Peyton?
I do not. I'm sorry if my hand was raised or something. That's my mistake.
Okay.
I do.
Mr. Chair, I
have-
think Julie does have a question or a
Okay.
comment.
I do have a question. With this change, this will affect all City of Moorhead and City of Dilworth areas? With this text amendment, it's not just this area that he's asking for the change. It would affect all the cities, Tier 1 and Tier 1 in Moorhead, Tier 1 in Dilworth?
Yes. It would be for the whole county. It wouldn't
Yeah.
just, Martin, it would be the whole county.
Yeah, and then, okay, I just wanted to point out, there's, business district right next to this property too, within a mile that could offer perfect solution for this business that is highway commercial, and it's within half mile. That's all.
Thank you. As long as we got it, Matt, I got a question for you. You got, I think you told me on the phone before, but 10 full-time equivalents. How did everybody come to 10 full-time equivalents? What was the process by coming up with the amount of employees there?
Mr.
You
Chair, I
just
think,
didn't pick a number out of the air. I'm sure you had a process.
Mr. Chair, it was mainly based on discussions on a business size that would not take these properties further away from what the urban expansion district is in how it's defined in our development code and our comprehensive plan. Also just considering traffic and things like that. Now, I suppose that 10 full-time equivalents could be debated by the planning commission and then subsequently the county board as well.
Yeah, because this is a recommendation to, would be a recommendation to the county board to make this change. And it's still up to the county board to make the change, correct?
Correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Anybody else have questions for Matt?
Mr. Chair, this is Ezra. I have a question for Matt.
Go ahead.
Last meeting, we talked, there's roughly 16 properties / businesses that this would affect. What would say if one of those businesses already has 20 employees hired working there out of this facility? Would we come in there and have to tell them to fire 10?
So, Mr. Chair and Ezra, we since did a kind of a deeper dive on those 16 properties. A lot of them are what would be considered legal non-conforming. So they would continue to operate as they are regardless of any text amendment or zoning change. You wouldn't be able to come back, if this were to pass, the county board were to approve this with that 10 being the number, that you couldn't go in and force a business to downsize because they were already operating prior to this being enacted.
Any other questions? I'll throw one more at you, Matt. On the non-conforming businesses, is there any restrictions on the number of employees they can have?
Mr. Chair, legal non-conforming businesses are a little bit tricky just because they are permitted to continue operating as they have been. The tricky part gets into what the county or whatever the governing local unit of government or local government unit would consider to be an expansion or an intensification of that use. In some ways, it's pretty clear. So if you had a legal non-conforming business that wanted to add another building, that would clearly be an expansion of that business, and the local government would not be permitted under state law to give them a building permit to do that because they're not conforming. With regards to hiring of employees, that's something that's maybe a little too nitpicky and harder. It'd be almost impossible for a county to track, or a city to track. So, you know, if a non-conforming business had 10 employees or 15 employees when they, prior to becoming legal non-conforming, if they shot up to 16 or 17, I don't think that there would be a way to enforce that.
Thank you.
At the county level, anyway.
Correct.
Mr.
Any other
Chair,
questions?
Mr. Chair, this is Ezra. I have another question for Matt. Then should we even have number 2 is in the standards for controlling how many employees can work out of a facility? If there's no really way to track it, or should we just not have that in text amendment?
Well, Mr. Chair, for a permitted use like this, that could be one of the conditions of the permit, would be to, you know, just provide information on how many employees you have every 5 years when these properties are inspected. But for a legal non-conforming use, those aren't typically permitted anyway, so they wouldn't have any conditions that they would have to follow. The only condition being that they can't grow at that location.
Yes, Chair, this is Steve Lindas. Matt, this is maybe a comment more than a question, but as I see this, number 2 and number 1 basically give very clear guidelines about how properties can be used in this situation. And in this particular situation, from the person that's asking for this, it's giving them time to grow. And if we're actually going to have a process in place where we actually review these things, you're now going to have an opportunity, if it turns out his business grows very nicely, which we all hope it does, that he then can have a review in 2-4 years, which he actually admitted that's probably the timeline that he would need to or want to make those changes. So I view this compromise favorably. I think both the cities looking at this, I do have a concern that area property holders who bought land with the expectation that a certain type of zoning and development was going to occur are sort of having their situation change. But I do think this is a compromise, and putting those strictures on actually helps that compromise because, you know, this gives the applicant actually time to be a good neighbor and waylay the fears of his people that he's going to be living next to. So I guess the question is, if we have a process, we could come back and modify this text amendment to allow, you know, more employees, if that was the case, right, Matt?
Mr. Chair, yeah, yep, you could modify that standard. If if you review this again in 2 to 4 years, or if you're looking at another property where someone has a commercial building and they want to do a service business, it'd be kind of a similar situation. And Mr. Chair, I guess one of the things with service businesses being that they don't really, typically bring in most of the 99% of the work occurs off-site. I think if this was something that was more intensely more intense use on-site, it might be a different story in considering a text amendment like this.
Yeah, the 10 equivalent employees, I'm sure that's comes something to do with parking. But it's down there on the other one, make sure there's adequate parking for their employees, right? And for this particular place, he's got all kinds of acreage out there to park people. The 10 wouldn't be, you could have 25 people in there as far as parking goes, and that wouldn't cause any problems for anybody. At least I don't think so. Can't see over, that's a big area out there. That's just a comment also. But I'm sure that's why the 10, some of the reasons why the 10 was in there for parking considerations.
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, this is Ezra. I have another question for Matt.
Go ahead.
If we approve this and say this business wants to come and change that 10 full-time to say 15, would they go to the Board of Adjustment on that? Say the business is operating, they come here, they get a permit, they want to change it to have it say 15 employees, would they go to the Board of Adjustment or Planning and Zoning for that change in the permit?
That would be, Mr. Chair, the Planning Commission. You could make the argument that it would be the Board of Adjustment, but it'd be difficult to Board of Adjustment typically does not deal with uses so much, and I'd be hard pressed to come up with the practical difficulty related to that property that would necessitate going to the Board of Adjustment for that change.
Any other questions? Any other questions from anybody? Commission meeting members, public? Hearing none, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Steve Lindass moves to close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Ezra, second.
All those in favor say aye. Kurt Shervin?
Aye.
Ezra?
Aye.
Ezra? Andrea?
Aye.
Jenny?
Aye.
Steve? Lindus?
Aye.
Joel?
Aye.
Kurt Stupstead?
Aye.
Steve Morrison?
Aye.
Public hearing is closed. Let's go through the facts and findings for this property this time. We've got,
And Mr. Chair, I do have them up on the screen as well for people to see.
okay. Do they match what I got in here? Overall needs? Yeah, okay. Effect of proposed use. In granting a zoning district amendment, the planning commission shall consider the effect of the proposed use upon the health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the occupants, surrounding lands, existing and anticipated traffic conditions in adjacent streets and land, and the effect on agricultural usage in the surrounding areas. Burden on, let's see, additional findings. In addition, this is what you got in here. In addition, the planning commission shall make the following findings among others while applicable. Burden on public utilities. The development authorized by the rezoning will not create an excess burden on public facilities or utilities which serve or are proposed to serve the area. Related to overall needs, the rezoning is reasonably related to the overall needs of the Clay County and the existing land use.
So Chair, Bill, in terms of, should we have a very clear no or yes on these? And then essentially, the city and the city's planning commissions and Matt works, and how do we express that it seems like there's a compromise So you say yes, but there's a compromise for that?
Well, is there going to be a burden on public services or utilities?
No, so we should be really clear that we say that's a no, right?
That's a no. Related to overall needs. Is reasonably related to the overall needs of the county and the existing land use. I think the word there is reasonably.
Yes.
Yeah, because that's the problem. But when I say reasonably, I look at the planning that is there, and it's in conflict with that. But there is an agreement, a compromise between the cities and the planning commissions, and so it's sort of like yes, but we have a compromise.
Right, then I think this, my understanding would be if you voted for this, it would be with these proposed compromises that the county and the cities have worked out.
Exactly.
Language.
Yes.
Consistency with ordinance. The rezoning is consistent with the purposes of this ordinance and the purposes of the rezoning district in which the applicant seeks classification.
Again, I would say, it's no, but there's a great compromise that's making this consistent.
Conflict with comprehensive plan. The rezoning is not in conflict with the comprehensive plans of any township, city, county, or county land use. Township or city of the county or the county land use plan.
So that is where it says, yes, we are in conflict. But again, we have this compromise that we've been, it seems like the cities, and I don't want to put words in Peyton Steer's mouth, but they're willing to allow this change.
That's my understanding. Prematurely stimulate public investment in utilities. The rezoning will not either individually or cumulatively stimulate premature public investment in the facilities and utilities described in subsection D.2.A of this section.
I believe that's a no.
Right.
So I think
some of these, the problem is for somebody new, it would be one thing. You're trying to do something for an existing building facility that was there before. Quite honestly, the building probably was there before the zoning came in. I think, but I'm not sure. So that's the facts and findings. The discussion. Anybody got any comments and questions now on what we're doing here? Or the process? Any more comments and questions?
So I think as speaking, from what I look at as a compromise, I am willing to support this as since both cities and the county have said this is what they would recommend. And even by the applicants in this specific case, and this is a text amendment, which it's really worth remembering that this is applying to every tier 1 expansion district. But even the applicant's own plans seem not to be in conflict with this. And so they might want the flexibility, but it's still not going to hurt them in the short term and medium term. And in the long term, there is an avenue, a process in place to make changes if necessary. So I like what's being proposed as a compromise.
Any other comments? Discussion by anybody on the commission? They still have to have an interim use permit besides. So this allows it, but the interim use would be, they still have to face the interim use permit process besides.
That's a good point. So if there's no other discussion, I'm willing to make a motion to recommend this to the commissioners.
I'll second that.
Okay, let's be real clear what we're recommending. You're going to recommend the text text change.
We're recommending the proposed text change on our, I guess, page 19 of my packet with the existing standards 1 through 9. So moving it from an interim, so essentially what Matt had put up on the screen before. What you have on the, or is this Matt's screen that I'm looking at?
Yeah, Mr. Chair and Steve, this is, it's
Yes.
the same thing.
So essentially, I'm moving to approve or recommend approval, I should say, to the county commission that the amendment to the urban expansion tier 1 that was worked out by the cities and the county.
Is there a second?
Yeah, second, Kurt Stubstead.
Kurt Stubstead was going to second that. So we have a motion to approve, to recommend this to the county commission, and a second. All those in favor say aye. Kurt Shervin?
Aye.
Ezra?
Aye.
Andrea?
Aye.
Jenny?
Aye.
I asked for Jenny, but she sometimes saves her vote for the commission meeting.
I did vote, I'm sorry.
Steve Lindas?
Aye.
Joel Hildebrand?
Aye.
Kurt Stubstead? Kurt? Steve Mortensen?
Aye.
Well, still waiting for Kurt. He's out there yet.
Yep. Aye.
All right. Okay, motion's been made and carried to be approved, to be recommended to the county commission to make the text change. Thank you. Number 2. William Borgen, request for platted major subdivision. The applicant is seeking approval of to a plat of a 3-lot subdivision in parcel 23.011.2000, tract B of registered land survey number 3, part of the Northwest Quarter, Township 140 North, Range 48 West, Section 11, Oakport Township. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
Ezra, so move.
Steve
Got a
Lindahl.
motion? Steve Lindahl, second. All those in favor say aye. Kurt Shervin?
Aye.
Ezra?
Aye.
Andrea?
Aye.
Jenny?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Joel?
Aye.
Kurt Stubbs?
Aye.
And Steve Mortensen.
Aye.
Public hearing is now open. Matt, could you fill some details, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So this request is to subdivide a 130-acre parcel into 3 lots, two residential lots that total approximately 6 acres each, and then one 118-ish acre outlot that will continue to be used for agricultural purposes, farming, kind of on the east side of this tract there. The zoning of this is agricultural general. The current land use of the property is agriculture. The surrounding land use is agricultural slash residential. The name of this proposed subdivision would be called Red Rock Estates. The parcel has been subdivided over the past 2 years with 2 lots in the southwest quarter and an additional lot in the northwest quarter. Platting this would be required due to density standards of no more than 2 residential parcels in a quarter. This property is also kind of unique in that it's a Torrens property. Probably 95% of the properties in Clay County are abstract. So there's two different types of land registration systems. The Torrens type is a little more different, and platting this would make ownership a little bit easier to ascertain. Just makes things a little cleaner. The properties to the south and then the one parcel immediately adjacent to the north, they're also registered Torrens as well. So, this 130 acre parcel is classified as prime farmland if it were drained. The crop productivity index for this parcel ranges from 68 to 90 out of 100. The western half where this proposed subdivision would be, where the residential parcels would be anyway, is kind of on the lower end of that productivity. The surrounding area has seen quite a bit of development for residential use. And this began with the Sweeney Subdivision in the 1940s. That's kind of to the south. And there are approximately 7 subdivisions along a 1.5 mile stretch of County Road 9, as well as some individual residences, and then the farm and the dell as well. One of the reasons why this area seems to be popular for development is it's very, very close to the FM area. It has direct access to a county paved road, and it's not in a 100 or 500 year floodplain, whereas if you were to go to the north of 80th Avenue North here, up here, this would all be in the flood fringe or the 100 year floodplain, and this area is not. So this is the plat, or the preliminary plat, looking at 2 residential lots in between these 2 to the north, and then 2 to the south, existing lots. And then this larger 118 acre, you could call it an outlot that would not be developed for residential purposes with this plat. Continue to be farmed. So some policy considerations. In our comprehensive plan, supporting the long-term protection of agriculture in the county, recognizing and supporting agricultural character, supporting agricultural operations against nuisance complaints when operations are being conducted accordingly to generally accepted farming practices, utilizing soil survey information and planning for the best use of land in rural areas. Planning for the orderly and efficient growth of residential development in Clay County, encouraging non-farm residential development to be clustered in and around incorporated rural communities and areas that would be considered marginal for ag use, and then planning land uses and implementing standards to minimize land use conflicts. And so the land division by registration of a plat of a subdivision would be required because this would be, this proposal would create 3 or more lots. You'd have the 2 residential lots and the remainder of the parcel. It'd be totaling 3 lots. Some other development code considerations that we'll touch on in a second is just traffic control and access management. County Road 9 is a collector road, so making sure that we have adequate spacing between access points to residences. The spacing requirement here would be 330 feet minimum. All these lots are about 394 feet wide. All right, so existing conditions with the topography. There's very little relief in topography, and consequently drainage can be an issue in this area. Drainage primarily flows north and west, overland, and through roadside ditches. And I can show you kind of what that drainage looks like. This is modeled using essentially this is a model that takes a ton of information on land cover, land use, precipitation, ground infiltration, and runoff that would happen for in this case, it would be a two-year, 24-hour rainfall event, kind of how the water would generally flow from that, which can also be a substitute for kind of your average runoff and average flow. A lot of it seems to go through the middle of this field, which would be that lot 3. That primarily drains to the southern part, to the parcels to the south, and then a little bit in that southeast corner. I should get my mouse over there so you can see what I'm pointing at. A lot of the drainage in the northern part just goes directly to this roadside ditch on 80th Avenue and over. And then we have some drainage that follows this path along the back of these lots, and then to this ditch on County Road 9. And you can kind of see that reflected in the LiDAR here, where those low spots are and where those ditches are. Kind of touched on this a little bit already with the existing conditions in the soils and the farmland. This would all be considered to be prime farmland if it were drained. I'm not entirely sure, and the applicant could answer this for us, if this is tiled at all. My guess is probably not, just due to the ditches that already exist, and it looks like there's some outlets on the northern side of the property as well that just go right into this ditch on 80th Avenue. The county highway department has dealt with some drainage issues to the south, where more intense development has occurred in the past. This ditch is just this ditch on County Road 9 is just pretty flat. And so they did have some comments on this, and I'll get to those in a second, actually. So getting ahead of myself here a little bit. So improvement plans and conditions. So the applicant isn't proposing any restrictive covenants. The lots are adequate for a well and septic. That third lot, as I had said before, will be farmed. The applicant has talked about doing some modified drainage on that third lot to reduce downstream runoff and kind of mitigate that as well. For new building permits, and this is true of everywhere in the agricultural general zoning district, before you can get an approved building permit, you have to basically sign a land use notification that says you are not living, it's essentially, the gist of it is, you're not living in the city, you're living in the country. You got to expect, activities and things that happen with living in the country as a normal part of life. And live with it, essentially. One thing that the highway department has requested too is to have ditch cleaning notices sent out for that ditch on County Road 9. It's a statement that they would send out that say that as the property owner, your responsibility is to, clean out, not dig or go below grade, the grade of the ditch at all, but to just clean out, vegetation or any debris or anything that might be impeding flows, just to make sure that flows aren't being, there's no backup that's occurring. And that includes, any ice and culverts and things like that, and just to keep water moving. So there's some neighborhood concerns from this proposal, primarily about the impacts of runoff and drainage and what that might have on surrounding properties. The highway department, similar to the subdivision request that you heard last month, they would prefer to have a shared access between the two lots. And that shared access would be the one point of ingress and egress to County Road 9. You could still have two separate driveways off of that access, but it would just be one point, and that would just reduce the amount of culverts that would need to go in. Because this proposal would take some prime farmland, or if drained, farmland out of production, and it's not a subdivision that would be occurring on an area that's wooded or of marginal soils. The applicant would need to obtain a conditional use permit if this final plat is approved by the County Board of Commissioners. That conditional use permit would be in my opinion, that would be the avenue for addressing any major concerns with this beyond any concerns with adding two more residential lots to this county, along County Road 9 here. So as this really only adds two lots to an area that's already been developed residentially, especially to the south, the staff recommendation would be to approve this request. Any questions for me at all? I can bring the plat back up too, so you can.
Matt, this is Steve Lindas, and this is more of a general question. And so if you don't have the answer right now, I can talk to you offline, but do we have an idea of the rate of, let's just say farmland that is being converted to residential, so essentially being taken out of production? If we had, I would love to see a graph on that to see is the rate increasing or decreasing? And it doesn't have a lot to do with this exact one, except for in the esoteric general sense.
Sure, Mr. Chair and Steve, we could certainly get that information and put something together. For residential development, I would say that it's not, just off the top of my head, I would say that it's not very common. I don't think it's a concern in the county at all. There are some land uses with regards to aggregate. Those typically aren't considered to be concerns either, just because they're typically temporary uses in nature, in that they might have a lifespan of, like, say, 5 to 20 years. There are some rare instances, maybe not rare, but less common instances where you might have a pit that would operate longer than that. Most of this area might be the exception to that rule, because I believe 2 years ago, this was before I came on with the county, there was a subdivision approved right across the street, Linden Trails. I really don't think that, I want to say there's only a couple lots that have been sold in that subdivision. I don't think there's really a whole lot of development actually happening in that subdivision. But that's certainly something we can look into. The only other gap in that information is with land that goes into CRP. It's typically not prime farmland that goes into CRP, but that's information that we just can't really get our hands on readily.
Anybody else have questions for Matt at this time? Hearing none. How about the applicant? Would the applicant like to speak to the board at this time?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
No, I don't really have anything to speak to other than I'm here to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay, anybody have questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chair, this is Ezra.
Yes?
Could the applicant please state his name?
Bill Borgen.
And then I have another question. Did you also subdivide those other lots that are in the northwest quarter and the southwest quarter? Did you own those at one time as well?
The 10-acre parcel in the northwest quarter, I did not own the farmland at that time. Another guy did, and he sold that lot, and then I bought the quarter from him, and then I did develop the two to the south and the one just to the north of the Red Rock Estate, Lot 1.
That's all I have right now, Mr. Chair.
All right. Anybody else have any questions? All right, any questions for the applicant? Hearing none, is there anybody that would like to speak for or against this proposal?
There's someone in the audience that would like to speak. If you could go state his name at the microphone.
Okay,
Hi, my name is Steve Vigasa. I live on that 10 acres in the north corner of that section, the northwest corner. And these lots here they're putting in here now, what are we gonna do about drainage? I'm the lowest spot in the corner. Each time they build a place there, they raise the ground. It gets deeper on my end. Are they gonna put retention ponds since this is a major subdivision? Like they did across the street on that other subdivision? I mean, this is getting to be a city out there. I thought this is gonna be rural, but it's getting to change. So I guess I'm wondering, are they gonna have retention? Are you gonna make the culvert in the corner bigger so it drains faster, or what's the fix to this? Because the guy next to me raised about, I'm saying roughly 2 acres to the height of the road, so that ground will never flood. So I guess I wanna know what's going on. So I guess that's kind of what I wanna know, if they're gonna follow subdivision rules. That's about it.
okay. All right, thank you for your comment. Anybody else for or against the proposal? Anybody for or against?
Mr. Chair,
Any
this
questions
is,
for the applicant or Matt? Anybody?
Mr. Chair, this is Matt, and just to address that concern, I do think that that is, yeah, that's a legitimate concern, and that would be something where, you know, in between now and the board, the county board meeting on this, I could work with the watershed district and see if there's some sort of, they'll do drainage studies for things like this. And we can see if we can get a drainage study for this area to see, you know, what the conditions would be, how they might change with this development, and then what sort of mitigation would be required to address drainage concerns.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of ditch is up there. I don't know if that's a, just a regular road ditch or if that's one of the county ditches.
Mr. Chair, this is Jenny. I have a question in regards to the diversion authority. What does, I'm trying to pull the maps up here and I can't exactly see because I know there is some impacts that will be changed north of town. You know, I think the landowners have legitimate questions in terms of drainage and that piece, but I know there were some impacts that were reduced when that project goes in. I'm not sure if it's specifically this piece because I can't open it.
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Mojo, I would want to say that I think that a lot of these concerns might be from overland runoff or overland flooding. A lot of that is caught.
Yeah, that's a county road there, right? County Road 9. To
Right,
go-
I thought it
that-
was on the north side.
You know, I imagine the water goes west there, or if it goes north, either way, the watershed would have to approve the culvert, from my experience with the watershed, and then the county would have to probably approve the one going underneath the county road. Have to dig it out and put in a bigger culvert.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, all of these would need approval permits from the watershed district, which is
Right.
why I'm thinking they would want to do a drainage study. Yeah, because they would clearly would prefer to see the water going downstream and not being backed up onto people's properties.
This is a rhetorical question, but what's on the west side of that other section there to the west? We don't want to delve in there. I mean, but they're not going to approve a big culvert there if you're going to bury somebody on the west side of the next section though either.
Mr. Chair, I believe that's all. With the exception of that new subdivision, that would be the only residential use of that land.
This is Bill Borgen. Could I speak to that a little bit?
Sure.
So section 11, which is the section in which these two lots are in, has no inlet into it. The only flooding that's possible in that section is from rain. The two quarters that are on the east side of that section have now been tiled. Both the northeast and the southeast quarters have been tiled, and they are gravity flow to the ditch that's to the east of them. And the development just north of my barn, which is across the road to the west from those two lots, the road ditch there was widened. The problem that where water has always backed up there when it ever has is further to the west. The culvert at the mile line has backed it up. There is no developing in that northwest quarter, and that culvert right there backs it up. Right in the center of that mile, I have one field approach into that farmland. When they widened that ditch on the north side of Linden Trails, we moved that culvert a little bit further north and reset it to a proper height. It had been there for 30 years and it was too high, and we fixed it.
Okay. Yep. From my past experience working the watershed, they don't want to change one culvert because they say they've got it metered to the river. But that's the question for the watershed. I don't think we have to adjust that at this point right now. Any other questions or comments for Matt? It's a legitimate question in the future, though. Anybody else have any questions at all? If not, then I guess we'll look for a motion to close the public hearing.
You're recording.
This is Steve Lindoff. I'll move close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second, Ezra.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor, say aye. Kurt Shervin?
Aye.
Ezra?
Aye.
Andrea?
Aye.
Jenny?
Yes.
Steve?
Aye.
Joel?
Aye.
Kurt?
Aye.
And Steve again.
Aye.
Public hearing is now closed. Let's do the facts and findings for this area. Get them out here. Effective use. In granting a major platted subdivision, the planning commission shall consider the effects of the proposed use upon the health, safety, morals, and general welfare of occupants in the surrounding lands, existing and anticipated land uses, traffic conditions, including parking facilities and adjacent streets and land, and the effect on agricultural usage and the values of property and scenic views in the surrounding areas, and the effect of the proposed use on existing comprehensive plans. Any problems?
So no.
The request will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purpose already permitted, not substantially diminish or impair property values within the immediate vicinity.
Yep. No.
The establishment surrounding development of surrounding property. The establishment of the request will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding vacant property for uses predominant in the area.
Don't think there's concerns.
Utilities, access roads, drainage, off-street parking and loading spaces. Adequate measures have been or will be taken to provide utilities, access roads, drainage, and off-street parking and loading spaces. I think Matt talked about that with the going to watershed.
Yeah, we talked the drainage, so I think that's fine.
Nuisance conditions, adequate measures have been or will be taken to prevent or control offensive odor, fumes, dust, noise, and vibration, water pollution, and soil erosion so that none of these will constitute a nuisance, and to control lighted signs and other lights in such a manner that no disturbance to neighboring properties will result.
No, that's an NA.
The use will not create an excess burden on parks, schools, streets, water supply, sanitary sewers, and storm sewers, and other public facilities or utilities that serve or are proposed for the area.
That's fine.
Compatibility, the use will be sufficiently compatible or separated by distance or screening from adjacent agricultural zoned or used lands so that the existing homes will not be depreciated in value or there will be no deterrence to agricultural use of said land. Appearance of structure and site. The structure and site shall have an appearance that will not have an adverse effect upon adjacent residential properties.
Fine.
Relationship to overall needs. The use is, in the opinion of the planning commission, reasonably related to the overall needs of the district and to the existing land use. In the case of floodplain areas, the proof that the location is necessary for facility operation and that alternative sites have not susceptible to flooding are not available. Consistency with ordinance. The use is consistent with the purposes of this ordinance and the purposes of the zoning district in which the applicant intends to locate the proposed use.
Fine.
The conflict with comprehensive plan. The use is not in conflict with any comprehensive plan of any of the township or city or county.
That's fine.
Traffic hazards, congestion in floodplain areas. The use will not cause traffic hazards in floodplain areas has access to flooding or ordinary. It's not a floodplain area.
Yeah.
Existing businesses nearby will not be adversely affected because of curtailment of customer trade brought about by intrusion of noise, glare, and general unsightliness.
That's not applicable.
All right. So time for discussion. We have any more discussion on the on this proposal amongst ourselves with Matt?
Mr. Chair, this is Matt.
Yes.
There is one thing that and Kurt, you might be able to speak to this a little bit more, but I know that the township is aware of this too, and they did provide a comment and just saying that, you know, so long as there wasn't any additional development along 80th Avenue North, they would be fine with this request. That they would still need to sign off on this preliminary plat and make a decision on it at Oakport Township meeting as well.
Right. Now, this again is a recommendation to approve this to the county commission. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, this is Ezra. I have a question for Matt.
Go ahead.
Once, if we approve this tonight, it goes to the county commission, does it come back here or no?
It can come back here. You can waive your right to see it again. The only thing that you might want to see, if there's been any further study or information on impacts to drainage from the watershed. Otherwise, that it will ultimately, depending on what the county board decides, would still ultimately come back here because this would be considered a conditional use permit subdivision. So you could just wait to see it again at that time as well.
So it's coming back to the board if it's approved, if the county commission approves it, it's coming back anyway.
That is correct, Mr. Chair. It would come back to the planning commission
All right,
for the conditional use permit.
all right. Any other questions, comments? Actions? No more questions. We're looking for a motion for or against.
Mr. Chair, this is Ezra. I'll make
Yes.
a motion to approve this, what would it be called?
It's a request for a platted major subdivision.
Yes. I'll make that motion and have it come back after, when it has to finally come back to us. So we'll waive the first one, but have it come back when it's a conditional use permit.
I'll second the motion as well. Just an item of note, in the preliminary plat provided, we need to change the chair of the county board from Commissioner Gross to Commissioner Campbell.
So we got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Kurt? Shirley? Ezra?
Aye.
Andrea?
Aye.
Jenny?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Joel?
Aye.
Kurt?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Motion's passed. They will be, be sent to the commission for approval. Okay, on to the third one. R.J. Zavarol and Sons Incorporated, request for interim use. The applicant is seeking approval of an interim use permit to allow a 39.5 acre gravel mining operation on parcel 12.021.1700 in the south half of the northeast quarter, section 21, township T42N, R range 45W, Hagan Township. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
So move, Ezra.
Is there a second?
By Steve Mortensen.
All those, we got a motion and a second to open public hearing. All those in favor say aye. Kurt Sherman,
Aye.
Ezra,
Aye.
Andrea,
Aye.
Jenny,
Aye.
Steve Lindus,
Aye.
Joel,
Aye.
Kurt,
Aye.
and Steve.
Aye.
Public hearing is now open. Matt, could you fill us in with some details in this one, please?
Absolutely. So this might be familiar to you, as you probably saw it in, those of you who were serving on the Planning Commission in 2019, saw this come before you. And it's also come, a similar request on the same property and by the same applicant came before you last year for an asphalt batch plant. So this is that same property. Let me just find my place. So the applicant is requesting an interim use permit for a 39.5 acre gravel pit in Hagan Township. This property's been mined since 2010. The original permit was granted to Alexandria Gravel Products. It was renewed again or an IUP was granted in 2017. And then again in 2019. So the reason that triggered the a new IUP request is Alexandria Gravel Products has sold this property and ceased their mining operations there, and RJ Zavrol and Sons is their intent is to take over mining on this parcel. So some policy considerations for you is again, our major one, supporting in the long-term protection of agriculture in the county, planning land uses and implementing standards to minimize land use conflicts, and then identifying, protecting, and preserving the county's high-quality natural, scenic, cultural, and open spaces. And in particular, for that's one policy that is relevant to this mine is balancing that preservation of native prairie areas with mining of the county's gravel resources. So this is an 80-acre parcel. It's located in the south half of the northeast quarter of Section 21 in Hagan Township. It's currently being used for gravel mining, has been for the past 11 years. It's zoned Ag General and Resource Protection Aggregate. Just to the south is a rather large block of native prairie and land that's zoned resource protection biological. So I kind of went over this a little bit. That it's been mined since 2010, and then it's had IUP granted in 2017 and then 2019 as well. And then RJ Zavril and Sons has been operating for the past couple of years, I believe, off this property with their hot mix plant. And they have an IUP for their hot mix plant that's set to expire in 2025. So in 2010, this is kind of what the property looked like. You can see that there was some exploration prospecting going on the property, it looks like. And then in 2019, this is kind of currently what it looks like today. So they purchased this property in December of 2020, and because of that the current IUP terminated, it will terminate within 90 days. So it's set to expire on March 22nd of this year. And they're looking for a permit to just continue that 39.5 acre mining operation, which includes excavation, screening, crushing, stockpiling, berming, and all those related activities on this 80-acre parcel. Their plan is to excavate in phases with an estimated volume to be extracted at 30,000 cubic yards per year, with approximate final depth of 35 feet, and that's subject to change based on materials found. Crushing, screening, and stockpiling will occur on site. Dewatering activities will be implemented, and they have been implemented in the past on this property. There is a on-site stormwater infiltration basin that is on the site. They are looking at an estimated 36 million gallons of water for washing. A lot of this is just going to be recycled water on site. They are currently working with the DNR to obtain a new water appropriations permit for this. And they do have stormwater permits from the Pollution Control Agency as well. They're requesting operating hours of March to December, Monday through Saturday, from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. for 5 years. That previous IUP allowed operation from April to November, so looking at an extra month on either end of that. So this is kind of their phasing plan. Not a lot of expansion outwards, mainly expansion down. Currently, well, I'll get to this in a second too. The SWCD was out there in 2017, I believe, and they determined that the current mining would not impact any wetlands. They had some conditions to consider, one being a 100-foot buffer from an intermittent stream that runs through the property and maintaining a 500-foot buffer from residences, as well as 100-foot, this isn't on there, but 100-foot buffers from, or 100-foot setbacks from all the property lines. And you can see in this map that the previous owner has kind of encroached into some of those setbacks, especially on the south. The property line setback and arguably into the 500-foot residential setback on the east side there. So I've been talking with the applicant about this, and our plan, and the township is aware of this too. And our plan is to go out to the site and do a site tour with the owner and the applicant of this site, and then just verify the setbacks from property lines and residences as well. The reclamation plan is to occur in phases as the aggregates are removed. They're going to be using this material that they don't plan on processing to reclaim previously mined areas. There will be water impoundments anticipated, particularly where the existing stormwater basins exist during the mining activities. And then they will plan on grading the surrounding topography to drain into the impoundments so we don't have any runoff leaving the site. So Hagen Township's aware of these proceedings, and the applicant is, I believe, they're gonna be heard by Hagen Township at their March 8th meeting for a new IUP. So these are the conditions from the previous IUP, and they're pretty standard for our permitting for aggregate extraction. One, operating within the provisions of the Land Development Code, operating within the provisions of the Hagen Township Ordinance and their permit, controlling dust and providing necessary maintenance on all gravel haul roads. I just want to point out that this number 3, I think, will be very important, just because we do get calls from residents who live just down the road on this particular mine, just with speeding and dust control. And the township has heard a lot of concerns as well over the past few years. That might change now that there's a different owner and operator out of this site. Just really, I think, important to be mindful of the neighbors. I've gone and investigated some of those claims in the past, and every time I've gone up there, the road has been watered or chloride has been applied. The county sheriff's department has been out there too, just checking speeds on trucks, and they haven't cited any of the haulers out of this pit for speeding at all. The operator shall provide proof of stormwater, air quality, and in this case, water appropriation permits. They're actively working on the water appropriations permit right now with the DNR. Operator shall contact the SWCD and have a wetland evaluation. I think it would be a good thing just to get the SWCD back in there and just make sure that there aren't any wetlands on the property that may have been missed. Looking at a maximum of 39.5 acres to be approved for mining operations. Any additional acres would require a new or amended IUP, and quite possibly any additional acres above that 39.5 would likely trigger the need for an environmental assessment worksheet as well. So that's something we should probably add to condition number 6. Reclamation bond of $1,750 per acre. Reclaim mined out areas as mining activities progress. Applicant shall provide parking, screening, lighting, drainage, portable sewer facilities consistent with county regulations as determined by our county environmental services, the environmental health department. And then the other proposed change is that mining operation of, right now we have April 1st through November 30th, but they were looking for a March through December, if possible, with the times and the days remaining the same. And then there is a provision in that for operating 24/7, if needed, they would just have to notify the planning office with the reason and length of time, just so extended hours can be approved and affected property owners notified. On a couple other permits, there's been a condition that instead of just going to the planning department, that they would actually have to go to the planning commission to get approval for additional hours or additional operating hours. So that might be something that you want to consider for this permit. Then having the permit expire December 31st, 2026. And then just maintaining a 500-foot buffer from residences, a 100-foot buffer from the intermittent stream, and then any other conditions that you would deem necessary. One thing I will say about that intermittent stream is it's not a public water. So if it were to be encroached upon or altered or anything like that, that would actually fall under the jurisdiction of the Wild Rice Watershed District. And the Wild Rice Watershed District has been made aware of this. And I believe that the applicant plans on contacting them if they haven't already, just with any questions or concerns related to that intermittent stream on the property. One thing that I just want to touch on that I did not is the haul route for this is just down 200th Street to County 34, and then either east or west from there. And the comments that we got from the highway department on that are just making sure that they do regular maintenance and on the road. If they're going to do any blading, make sure that they contact any landowners that live south of the site, just to make sure that they're not screwing up anyone's dust control that they have already applied on the property. We did also get a comment letter from the DNR, and I believe the DNR is on the call too if you have any questions for them. Let me just pull this up quick. So as we kind of talked about, this mine is adjacent to native prairie, the Blazing Star Scientific and Natural Area. So, the biggest impacts I think would be any groundwater, which would be dealt with through that water appropriations permit. But honestly, probably the biggest impact is dust. So dust control kind of on 200th Street, I think is important for two reasons, and that's keeping dust down for the people who live out there, and then keeping dust down for just potential impacts to the native prairie out there as well. So I get out to this area a lot. It's one of my favorite birding spots in the county, so know it pretty well, and dust can have an impact on people who live out there and the wildlife in that area too. Other points to touch on, I think the applicant is working with the DNR on water resources. Environmental review might be necessary if they ever plan to expand beyond that 39.5 acres. That would trigger it, environmental reviews also can be proposed by this board. They can be proposed by citizens who are concerned. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that 40-acre threshold to trigger an environmental review. For mining and reclamation, when we get to that point, one point that I thought was particularly pertinent for, and maybe that's not the right word, but for just gravel mining in general as a whole in the county is I think you see a lot of abandoned gravel mines just become big stands for poplar trees and not much else. And I think that it's important to, you know, if we're gonna take the time to extract the resource, to take the time to restore it. It's probably not gonna be what it was before, but in many cases can be better than it was before, so. Any questions for me at all?
Mr. Chair, if I may, this is Jenny.
Okay.
Had a comment in terms of the months of the year. Was the prior CUP, in terms of months, what was on the prior CUP?
It was
IUP.
April through November.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, this is Ezra.
Okay.
Regarding, like, yeah, the months of operations through March, I mean, during,
Wait till I mute. That's not you, it's somebody else.
normally, weight restrictions would not allow him to haul out of there in March anyways with weight restrictions on the township roads, so. I don't know if by giving him March or not giving him March, I don't know if that makes a big difference.
And then the only other comment I'd have would probably be about the 24-hour piece. Part of why we keep that as just contacting the planning and zoning department is in the case of an emergency, when they need flood emergency hauling. I think that's kind of why we've kept it. It's not really conducive to getting the planning commission together to approve that. So I personally am still okay with it being a staff review, but that certainly can be discussed.
In regards to Jenny's comment, it doesn't make any sense to me to have the planning commission do that. I think we've got the head of the department office can take care of that quite nicely.
Yeah, I concur, especially when it's considered an emergency use. Matt, I do have a couple questions, and one has to do with the DNR letter, and in terms of they have some recommendations in there. You know, one of them is easy, saying, hey, let's be very specific and say you need to be, you limit yourself with 10 feet of the water table. And, but what, if you've had time to review this, what are the other recommendations that we should add on to any proposed recommendation?
Mr. Chair and Steve, is your question just pertaining to the water, groundwater in general, or?
Groundwater, they had a couple things, and I was going to make sure that they didn't overlap. And so I was basically going to lean on your expertise to be able to say if the conditional use, you know, the only one that I saw for sure was the 10-foot limit to the water table. That wasn't in any of our staff recommendations that we could add in. But I was keenly aware that potentially there was something that I wasn't catching when they were talking about buffer zones.
Sure. Mr. Chair and Steve, you know, in this particular hit, they've already mined to into the water table on one portion. And as far as groundwater impacts of that nature, I really think that that question or those issues would be best left addressed to the DNR staff through that water appropriations permit. That might be the best avenue to address those groundwater concerns. As far as I'm aware, the nearest calcareous fens are quite a distance away to the south and to the west. So I'm not sure what impacts it would have on calcareous fens. And I don't think that was mentioned in the DNR letter at all.
No.
You know, I really think that Josh over at the DNR would be best equipped with his knowledge and expertise to handle those concerns. And I think that maybe from our end, just making sure that we're getting those permits as they come in. I just got an email, I think today, you know, asking for comment on a water appropriations permit for this property. So that's another avenue to address any county concerns at all.
So I guess water appropriation is different than when you actually dig down and scrape into the water table, because now you further expose, I should say. You know, just because you have one exposure doesn't mean that you just give up. So that's kind of what I was saying, is that, you know, do we set a limit to say, okay, you can't get within, you know, any further limit of 10 feet between the water table? That's been sort of a standard condition that we've had in other permits that we've issued.
Mr. Chair and Steve, yeah, that is correct. That is kind of a standard condition that we've had, and a lot of those have come on new mines or mines that haven't hit the water table. In here, they've already kind of hit it. So, and I'm not sure. I think the DNR, you know, and this is something that I can follow up with Josh on, and with the DNR and what the scope of that water appropriations permit is. I can also follow up with the MPCA on, you know, the stormwater discharge permits and things like that. They do already have water infiltration basins in place to kind of address some issues. I would just need to further clarify that with the PCA, the Pollution Control Agency, and that's something I can certainly follow up on and bring back to you at our next Planning Commission meeting, or even before then.
Okay, so then the other one probably is very much related to this, and you're probably going to say, I need to talk to the TNR about this. And that is, I looked at, you know, it's on the PAR packet, the very colorful picture where it basically has their plan so it's on page 52, of their different extractions, the different area. And they have planned 31.79 acres of extraction. And the space next to it that has already been mined, by my rough estimate, was at least 10 acres, which exceeds that 40-acre kind of threshold where you now need to complete an environmental assessment worksheet. And so I wanted to know exactly, that's the one where I was looking at and gauging area. It also kind of begs the question, which has nothing to do with this application, of what are the consequences for the prior owner exceeding essentially limits that were put into place for their permit in terms of setbacks.
That second question, that's a very good question. It would certainly have an impact on probably future permits. If they applied for future permits in the county, could have an impact. This is the boundary that Erica from our staff delineated and what I'm kind of showing you right now. And that comes out to be about 34 acres based on what we delineated. It does not include this top area that they have in their plans. So we would just need to work with the applicant to make sure and maybe modify that phasing, especially the, phase 5.
Exactly.
Yes. And just making sure that they stay within that 39.5 acres.
Yeah, and the west part of phase 4 also.
Yes.
Thank you, Matt.
Yep. And Mr. Chair and Steve, as I think about it too, when we go out and visit the site, some of this acreage will undoubtedly come out, especially on the south, the areas where, if indeed it's confirmed that they're within that 100-foot setback of the property line, that will need to be reclaimed. And that's something that thinking about consequences for the previous landowner, that's something that, the current landowner could maybe pursue in terms of the cost of that reclamation.
So did the prior permit holder had a reclamation bond? What happened to that bond? Because they clearly didn't reclaim.
That's something that I would have to look into too as well. And that's something that that's actually a very good point. So thank you for that. That's something we can maybe use for reclaiming the areas that are within the setbacks.
I guess I was muted. Any other questions for Matt? Would the applicant like to speak to the board at this time?
Hello, my name is Zach Bope with RJ's Admiral & Sons. Nothing direct to speak of right now. Here to answer any questions, obviously. One clarification, I guess, to kind of address the total acreages. I think you guys kind of discussed it there too, but as we do progress in future phases, the plan would be to kind of close up and reclaim a lot of the early phases as we go. And as Matt mentioned too, some of the current acreage is stockpile locations that are incorrectly located possibly, and would possibly be moved. Obviously, with new ownership, we're going to do things a little differently. Plan to be there a long time. It's say we want to take care of and manage for the future. So.
Any more comments? Any questions for the applicant? I have a couple. First of all, you're aware that the stockpiling and everything is all within the 39 acres, right? That all counts as your 39 acre mining?
Yes, I do understand that. Yep.
Okay.
So we'd have to manage this site as we go. And obviously, if the site is,
well, it can't be a floating 39. You got to pick in my estimation, your understanding, you got to pick the 39. That's the 39 you got.
I understand that, and I believe as we expand, if the material is as good as we think it is, we will be working on that environmental impact statement and going through that process to be able to go over that threshold.
Okay, it says you're going to dig to 35 feet. How are you doing that? Backhoe?
What? Sorry, I missed that. One more time, please.
It says you're going to final depth is going to be 35 feet. How are you getting down to 35 feet?
We'll be dewatering as we work with the DNR to get the permits there. We'll be doing some dewatering and discharging. Otherwise, we'll be digging down with backhoes through the water table. We'll have settling ponds like we've done on other sites in the areas. Yep, have settling ponds on site, pumping from one spot to the next. So, yep.
So you're basically going to use payloader.
Yep. Yep.
My question. Anybody else have any questions for the applicant?
Yes, Bill, you kind of asked my question in terms of 35 feet, but how does the 35 feet, when you say 35 feet, how does that compare to the water table?
Based on initial, obviously it's new to us, but based on initial looking out there this fall, the water table is current water table was about 12 to 15 feet deep in the existing pit. That is it, probably about 20 feet deep in spots where we checked it right now. So the current pit, I guess I'll clarify that the current pit was about 20 to 25 feet deep. We were in the water about 10 to 12 feet of that. So.
And Mr. Chair, this is Matt, just
Yeah.
for the applicant, and for folks watching, that's that blue area on this map.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And that's okay as long as the DNR, they're going through all the DNR hoops and jumping through all the hoops and following the, bells and whistles. So the DNR has any problem with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That should
We
be okay
understand.
with us too,
Yep.
in my mind,
This is
but
one of 7 permits we are acquiring for this site.
sure.
So, Zach, I don't know if you've had a chance to review the letter from the DNR, but it did say, and so I might be misreading this, and so I'm curious. It says to prevent potentially hydrological impacts to adjacent plant communities. The recommendation was to require a 10-foot vertical buffer above the water table throughout the entire lifespan of the gravel mining operation. They had recognized that the project has already exposed the water table, and then they recommended limiting further exposure. And so I know you're working with them, so I'm kind of curious how that works. And so I might be misunderstanding what it means by 10-foot vertical buffer.
They haven't expressed any, I guess I'll back up here a little bit. In acquiring the permit with the DNR and in those discussions, they were more concerned about the dewatering activity and the washing activity and the use of the water. He did not bring up any concerns about the water table itself to us, other than what's written here. I guess I have not spoken directly about that comment, no, with Josh, but he did bring up obviously the appropriation for water usage. But
Thank you. Yeah, that's the next paragraph is essentially the limit of 1 million gallons per year before it triggers a permit required, which you are working through.
yep.
So like I say, I think the DNR has got the water situation covered, at least in my mind, with all the permits. Any other questions for the applicant?
This is Jamie Thibodeau from Minnesota DNR.
Okay.
I was wondering if I could address a few comments and on the letter that I drafted up.
We're going to get to you. We got.
Okay.
We'll get to you, Jamie.
Okay,
Let us,
great.
Like I say, anybody on the board have questions for the applicant at this time? Hearing none, we'll go to anybody want to speak for or against it. Now, Jamie, Ms. Thibodeau, why don't you come in there and explain your letter?
Okay, I'm sorry for the my lack of ability to follow process. This is Jamie from Thibodeau from Minnesota DNR. I can put my camera on. Hi, everyone. I frequently end up sending letters because the Felton area has a lot of special resources, and we have a lot of staff that keep an eye out on our lands and our land assets and plant communities in the Felton area. And you're correct in that the applicant is working with Josh Przowski on the water appropriation permit for the use of water for gravel washing and dewatering. However, he is only able to work within his within the public water rule, which is that 10,000 gallons per day, 1 million gallons per year. That's squarely within the DNR public water rule. But what we're seeing within the Felton area is that simply exposing the water table through extraction can cause a natural pumping of water through evapotranspiration. And not just calcareous fens are groundwater fed wetlands. The Felton area has a lot of wetlands around these gravel pits, and simply by excavating, you can expose the water table and create this natural pumping effect, which can have a dewatering effect on adjacent wetlands. So I think that was the extent of our comments regarding that, and that Matt had mentioned getting the SWCD out to the site as it regards to WACA. I think that's a good idea to see what their thoughts are about potential impacts of adjacent wetlands from exposing and further exposing of the water table, because that would be squarely within their regulatory authority. The stream, also the non-public water stream would be a WACA regulation as well for any potential impacts there. The other thing I just want to point out and ask a question is, Matt had mentioned impoundments as it relates to stormwater management. And I just had a question on how large those impoundments would be, what the vertical height of them would be. And I guess that's a question for the applicant.
Yeah, that's,
It's a variable, obviously, depending on the type of material that's being excavated, if it's all usable material, if there's a bunch of overburden. A couple different variables will play into that. I don't expect it to be 35 feet, kind of like the drawing that I submitted to Matt showed. Obviously, we are going to slope it back into the existing water table, obviously, and then drop down, but it would possibly be, up to 20 some feet, I suppose, that vertical drop. But
the reason why I ask I'm having a hard time figuring out what the landscape would look like and stuff just based on the descriptions, but we do have a dam safety regulation. So anytime you're impounding more than 6 feet of water, which usually isn't an issue in Minnesota, but in some parts the topography is such that you can be holding back 6 feet of water, and that would trigger a dam safety permit, a need for a dam safety permit. The other comment that I had was that there are some rare resources in this area, and it would be good to submit and work with our threatened and endangered species coordinator, particularly one that may be on the area would be the loggerhead shrike. There are certain avoidance measures that can be can be done to avoid a taking of that species. But we have a process and a coordinator, and I provided the link in the letter as well. And those were the majority of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want any comments for or against the project, the proposal? Anybody have any questions for anybody, for the applicant, for Matt? Hearing none, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So move, Ezra.
Second, Jenny.
Got a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye. Kurt, Sherman, Ezra,
Aye.
Andrea,
Aye.
Jenny,
Aye.
Steve, and
Aye.
Joel,
Aye.
Kurt,
Aye.
and Steve.
Aye.
Public hearing is now closed. Let's go through the facts and findings for this one. He's up here so I can read it. All right. Effective use. Okay, this one it says in granting a conditional use permit, we're talking about interim use permit. The planning commission shall consider the effect of the proposed use upon the health, safety, morals, general welfare of applicants of surrounding lands, existing and anticipated land uses, traffic conditions, including parking facilities on adjacent streets and land, and the effect on agricultural usage and values of property and the scenic views in the surrounding areas, and the effect of the proposed use on existing comprehensive plans. Anybody see any problems there?
As long as they get the 500 feet from the one property owner, it's fine.
Yeah, there's some things to address there. Matt's already talked about that.
Yeah.
Use and enjoyment of other property. The conditional use will not be in interest to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purpose already permitted and shall not substantially diminish or impair property values within the immediate vicinity.
That's been addressed.
The development surrounding property, the establishment of the conditional use will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding vacant property for uses predominant in the area.
No.
Utilities, access roads, drainage, off-street parking. What's that? Utilities, access roads, drainage, off-street parking, and loading spaces. Adequate measures have been taken or will be taken to provide utilities, access roads, drainage, and off-street parking and loading spaces.
That's fine.
Nuisance conditions, adequate measures have been or will be taken to prevent the control of offensive odors, fumes, dust, noise, vibration, water pollution, and soil erosion, so that none of these will constitute a nuisance, and to control lighting, net lights in such a manner that no disturbance to neighboring properties result. I think that's been addressed in all the conditions and all the permits too. The use will not create an excessive burden on parks, schools, streets, water supply, sanitary sewers, storm sewers, and other public facilities or utilities that serve or are proposed to serve the area.
Not applicable.
Compatibility. The use will be sufficiently compatible or separated by distance or screening from adjacent agriculturally zoned or used lands so that the existing homes will not be depreciated in value and there will be no deterrence to agricultural use of said land. Problem there. The appearance of site and structure shall have an appearance that will not have adverse effect upon adjacent residential properties. Relationship to overall needs. The use is, in the opinion of the Planning Commission, reasonably related to the overall needs of the district and to the existing land use. In the case of floodplain areas, this is not a floodplain area. Doesn't matter there. Consistency with ordinance. The use is consistent with the purposes of this ordinance and the purposes of the zoning district in which the applicant intends to locate the proposed use. It is conflict with comprehensive plans. The use is not in conflict with the comprehensive plan, if any, of the township, city, or county.
That's fine.
Traffic hazards, use will not cause traffic hazards or congestion in the floodplain areas as access during flooding for ordinary and emergency vehicles. Fine. Existing businesses nearby will not be adversely affected because of curtailment of customer trade brought about by intrusion of noise, glare, or general unsightliness.
That's fine.
And with that, some discussion. What do you guys think? What are you guys thinking out there? Discussion. Any more comments or discussion on what's going on?
So I think Ezra kind of addressed the number 10 if you needed to have a change to the April 1st, November 30th operation, if that's even necessary or possible.
Well, the December is, of course.
Yeah.
My thought on that was that that would allow them to work earlier and later they don't need to haul to work. They could be stockpiling product. They could be, making screening product. And they don't need to be hauling out, because he's absolutely right. Sometimes it's into May before you can actually do any hauling.
Yeah.
This is Jenny. I agree with that. I just wanted to be as consistent as possible with some of the other pits up there, because I think there are some that are operating in March, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing they've addressed on these conditions is the number 12 and 13, not necessarily 13, the buffer, all the buffers need to be addressed and looked at with the new owner, and if they're in the buffer, they need to make some kind of adjustment to get out of them.
Yeah. So the other thing that I'd like to see is addressing the Minnesota DNR's concerns, which would be adding a condition to work with the appropriate water conservation district. I guess that would be the Wild and Rice, right?
Yeah.
And just to make sure that they're conforming to OWACA. And then the other one was to coordinate with the endangered species coordinator with Minnesota DNR to make sure their impacts are being minimized. And I would assume that if you're coordinating with the water conservation district, if you're digging down and then you actually find that you're actually impacting, the water table process is extracting, then they would work with them to actually minimize and or eliminate any negative effects that their operations are having, because there probably are ways that you could still be able to mine but not have a negative impact.
Any other comments? Discussion? No, I guess my biggest thing is that this is an open pit already. I mean, this thing is pretty much open all the way. Really, I don't see there are going to be much changes what they're going to do up there. I suppose there's some, but that's just my look at it. They got to stay within the buffers though.
Well, so exposing more water table could cause, I don't know if it is. This is the thing with hydrology, that you want to be aware of it and be, noting if all of a sudden it's starting to actually negatively impact surrounding, sensitive wildlife areas. You want to be able to address that. And the addressing might be that you stop having as large of a pit. So you're because of your process, you're making a bigger open water pit, and you just say, okay, we need to fill in some part of it so that we reduce that hydrological impact. That might be the requirement. It just changes around your reclamation process. And again, it wouldn't necessarily have a negative impact. It would just change around how you're doing it. But if you don't put a condition on where you actually make someone attentive to that, then you're apt to have an adverse effect that negatively impacts the community around the area.
Any other comments, discussion?
I have a comment. Why do we have to see this in 5 years? He's not gonna be done mining this in 5 years. Why don't we extend that out for 10 years instead of just 5 years?
Matt, that's a question for you, I guess. What's the idea with the 5-year? I think that, I'm gonna guess here that the 5-year gives you a chance. They have to come back in 5 years, and you can kind of check up on them and make sure they're doing what they're supposed to.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, that's correct. And I believe that there's some timing coordination with Hagen Township on their permits as well, just to sync them up. I know that the township kind of likes to see that. One thing that we're trying to do just countywide is just implement a more robust gravel pit inspection process. And so it could be an instance where in 5 years, when we're out checking this pit and looking at progress or looking at activities related to their conditions on their permit, maybe a result of that inspection is, well, we might want to modify this permit. And so instead of going the full 10 years, at that point, there's kind of a check-in point where maybe you need to come back and we need to look at some of these conditions.
Answer your question, Ezra?
Yeah, that answers my question.
And I support that too, because if there was some, you aren't going to see adverse effects immediately, if ever, because it's all it may. And if we are seeing something in 5 years, we could look at that and say, hey, we need to change. Maybe the rest of this you can't go 35 feet, or nobody has a crystal ball to see. But I actually like the idea about them having to. Hopefully, it doesn't take 5 years for them to get a checkup, but at least in 5 years they need a review.
Yeah, and I guess my question with the absolute, it may do it, but then it may not either. So I think it's a 50-50 thing there. But anyway, it doesn't hurt to have people watching. The 5 years is a good thing. Any other comments? Discussion?
Mr. Chair, this is
Not if somebody's ready to make a motion one way or the other?
Mr. Chair, this is Ezra. I'll make a motion to approve this
Okay.
interim use permit with conditions 1 through 13, change 10 from April 1st to March 1st and December 30th.
This is Joel. I will second that. And so I understand Ezra's motion. This does not include number 14.
No.
Okay. I second Ezra's motion.
Okay. All those in favor, we got a motion
I
to
guess
approve?
I have a question, Ezra. Could you have a friendly amendment where you would accept actually having the applicant to coordinate with Minnesota DNR Endangered Species Coordinator and also the Water District for basically making sure they're having best practices. So when we meet again in 5 years, we actually have some benchmarks so we can evaluate that they actually don't have a problem.
No.
Mr. Chair,
And my comment to that is that item, sentence 5, item 5 covers that. With the exception of what the DNR asked for today.
Okay, does that clarify with, it's 1 through 14, with number 10 being changed to March 1st to December 30th? And dropping 14.
Mr. Chair, this is Matt. If I
Yes.
can just add a comment on number 14, natural heritage request from the DNR is not a overly burdensome ask for the applicant. Our highway department does multiple of these throughout the year. And it's typically just kind of a desktop review and you get information back on what's in the area.
I'll add it on if Joel seconds it.
I'll
That'll be
second.
number Joel, you
I'll
want to go with 14 then? Okay, so item 14 was the, checking with the bird guys. Okay,
Thank you. Chair.
all those in favor, say aye. Kurt Sherman,
Aye.
Ezra,
Aye.
Andrea,
Aye.
Jenny,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Joel,
Aye.
Kurt,
Aye.
and Steve.
Aye.
Motion has carried. So that's for the permit for Zavro. Thank you, everybody. On to the next one. XAMP Solar LLC request to amend a conditional use permit. The applicant is seeking approval to a conditional use permit approved on January 28, 2020 to construct and operate a community solar garden on parcel 27.004.0401 in the east half of section 4, township 140 north, range 46W, Spring Prairie Township. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
So move, Ezra.
Second,
Second,
Steve
Mojo.
Lindahl.
Okay, we've got a motion, a second, to open public hearing. All those in favor? Kurt,
Aye.
I did.
Ezra,
Aye.
Andrea,
Aye.
Jenny,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Joel,
Aye.
Kurt,
Aye.
and Steve.
Aye.
Public hearing is now open. Matt, could you fill us in on the details here, please?
Yes, absolutely. So this is a pretty simple request since we just heard it from January of last year. The one change, there's a couple of changes. One is that the applicant did not actually go through with constructing the community solar garden on this property within a year. So according to our ordinance, you have to reapply for your CUP within 1 year, or if it's over a year and construction is not substantially progressed. The other thing is that the previous applicant was Nexamp Solar. This applicant is still kind of Nexamp Solar, but it's just for simplicity's sake, it's a subsidiary of Nexamp called Spring Prairie LLC. The request is virtually identical to the request from last year. And so they're looking to allow a 1 megawatt community solar garden just east of Highway 9. There's about 5 already operational in the county along Highway 9 right now. This would be the 6th. But this would be the first from Spring Prairie Solar LLC that's run by Nexamp. The other 5 are US Solar. There's one actually right to the east on this parcel right here. And I believe one just to the south actually too. And one to the north. Yeah. And it's just because there's this good interconnection point substation right here. So really virtually no change, just those two things. Their CUP expired because no activity took place, and the name is being changed from Nexamp to Spring Prairie Solar LLC. And so my recommendation is simply to approve this CUP with the updated owner information and the same conditions that were present on the CUP that was granted in 2020. Those conditions being that the construction shall meet all county, state, township building permit requirements, decommissioning bond payable at $1,000 for years 6 through 25 of the project. The lifespan of these projects is typically 25 years, so starting on year 6 through 25, looking at an annual kind of $1,000 bond. A surety bond at 125% of the cost of establishing a native plant cover type on the project site. That's one of the requirements in our renewable energy ordinance, is that they plant a native prairie to the Board of Water and Soil Resources, Soil and Water Resources standards. And then there was a repair access and culvert to the site to specifications of the Clay County Highway Department. And so, just to refresh your memory here, this is kind of the site, this is where it would go. The project would cover just a little bit over 7 acres, I believe, and provide 1 megawatt of power. Any questions for me at all?
Anybody have any questions for Matt? Okay, no questions for Matt. Like I say, if everybody's here a year ago, they're sure pretty fresh in everyone's mind. Does the applicant want to speak at this point for explain your proposal here?
Yeah, let me, is that, am I coming in clear?
Yeah, what's your name?
Yeah, it's David Kosturek from Nexamp Solar, as presented here, Spring Prairie Solar LLC. Yeah, thank you for taking this matter up tonight. Greatly appreciated. I know we're getting to the later end, so greatly appreciated that you're hearing this. So Matt hit on the hammer. We are exactly keeping things the same. We had an issue with Excel in terms of the interconnection process. So when we went for an application for them to determine what the cost is and the upgrades necessary to connect to that substation, they had, a technical issue with one of the reports in another generator, another power producing entity that was underreporting some of their data. So Excel had to go put ours on hold and go back and restudy everything and then come back to us. So we lost at least 3 to 4 months of time working with them. We're back in movement, and we're moving towards the final to get the interconnection agreement. We hope to, push, everything goes smoothly here. We hope to push this through construction, hopefully, beginning to midsummer. So that would put us back on track. Unfortunate issue with Excel that did not allow us to get moving. So that put us in a lapse of our, previous approval from, I think, the 28th of January. So that's where we are. And then in terms of Spring Prairie Solar LLC, Matt, is also correct. We put these projects as they progress further, and we know the success or the likelihood of success of getting these projects up and running. We simply, just for tax purposes and other business purposes, transfer the name into a separate LLC. So we have already done that. So, that's why we decided, let's get the name changed officially with the permitting as well. So it's recognized by the county by its correct name. So Spring Prairie Solar LLC, and it's simply just a subsidiary of Nexamp. But, and feel free to, answer any questions, you may have. But that's about it.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Custer, do you anticipate having more delays with Excel?
I do not. We are in the final stages, so we got an estimate back that we're very happy with from a business model. So it's just internally some things for us to figure out, and we have to sign off on that agreement. So there are no more studies and no more data to be, looked over by Excel. So to answer your question, no.
Thanks.
Any other questions, folks? There are no questions from the board. Does anybody want to speak for or against this application? For or against? Anybody out there is for or against this solar garden? I hear nothing. Anybody have any more questions for the applicant or Matt? Anyone? Hearing none.
Bill,
Let's have
this is Jenny.
What's that?
So this is Jenny. I can make a motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you. Need a second?
Second, Ezra.
We got a motion to close the public hearing and a second. All those in favor say aye. Kurt?
Aye.
Ezra?
Aye.
Andrea?
Aye.
Jenny? Steve Lindis?
Aye.
Joel?
Aye.
Kurt?
Aye.
And Steve?
Aye.
Public hearing is now closed. Let's go through the facts and findings quick.
Bill, you just got muted.
Must have hit it by mistake. Sorry. Public use or effective use. In granting a conditional use, the Planning Commission shall consider the effects of the proposed use upon the health, safety, morals, and general welfare of occupants of surrounding lands, existing and anticipated land uses, traffic conditions, including parking facilities and adjacent streets and land, any effect on agricultural usage and values of property and scenic views in the surrounding area, and the effect of the proposed use on existing comprehensive plans. Enjoyment and use of other property. The conditional use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purpose already permitted, and not substantially diminish or impair property values within the immediate vicinity. Development of surrounding property. The establishment of the conditional use will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement surrounding vacant property for uses predominant in the area. Utilities, access roads, drainage, off-street parking, loading spaces, adequate measures have been or will be taken to provide utilities and access roads, drainage, and off-street parking and loading spaces. Nuisance conditions, adequate measures have been or will be taken to prevent or control offensive odor, fumes, dust, noise, and vibration, water pollution, and soil erosion, so that none of these will constitute a nuisance, and to control lighted signs or other lights in such a manner that no disturbance to neighboring properties will result. The use will not create an excessive burden on parks, schools, streets, water supply, sanitary sewers, and storm sewers, any other public facilities or utilities which serve or are proposed for the area. The use will be sufficiently compatible or separated by distance or screening from adjacent agricultural zoned or used lands so that existing homes will not be depreciated in value and there will be no deterrence to agricultural use of said land. The structure and site shall have an appearance that will not have an adverse effect upon adjacent residential properties. The use is, in the opinion of the Planning Commission, reasonably related to the overall needs of the district and to the existing land use. In the case of floodplain areas, the proof that the location is necessary for facility operation and alternative sites not susceptible to flooding are not available. Consistency with ordinance. The use is consistent with the purposes of this ordinance and the purposes of the zoning district in which the applicant intends to relocate the proposed use. Conflict with comprehensive plans. The use is not in conflict with the comprehensive plan if any of township, city, or county. Use will not cause traffic hazards or congestion in floodplain areas as access during flooding for ordinary and emergency vehicles. Existing businesses nearby will not be adversely affected because of curtailment of customer trade brought on by intrusion of noise, glare, or general unsightliness. That being done, I don't know if there's any need for much discussion. We know about it. If anybody wants to discuss it, fine. If not, anybody want to make a motion to approve or deny?
Mr. Chair, this is Jenny. I'll make a motion to approve the request.
I will second that, Steve.
Okay, and that's with the conditions 1 through 4.
Yes, sir.
Very good. We got a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor say aye. Kurt?
Aye.
Ezra?
Aye.
Andrea?
Aye.
Jenny?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Joel?
Aye.
Kurt?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion's approved. The permit. Let's see. On to number 8, I believe, unfinished business. Matt Jacobson, Clay County Comprehensive Plan Update.
Mr. Chair, I think we still have Adam Altenberg with us from MetroCog. He's going to give us a little update on comprehensive plan process to date. And I think, Adam, you can request to share the screen. Do you have that option? Maybe if I stop sharing.
Yes, I, at least I had it up here.
You're on. We see you.
Okay. Let's see here. I saw the option to request to share the screen. Okay, let me try this here quick. Pardon me one moment. It's not, let's see.
Yeah, I thought it was an option too, but now I'm not seeing it either. I do
Okay.
have your,
Do you have the presentation by chance?
I do, yes. I can pull that
Okay.
up quick.
It's just a slide or two here. So, let's see.
All right. So can you all see that? No?
No, I got a four square here.
Oh, here we go.
There we go.
All right, thanks, Matt. I apologize for that. Just first off, thanks for your time here tonight. Just a very quick update, if you want to just go to that next slide quick. Continuing to make progress on the comprehensive plan, and we've moved forward on a few of our community engagement items. First to note, we've settled on Tuesday, March 23rd, as the date for our first series of community engagement meetings. Format will be virtual, and residents and other stakeholders will have the option to register for 1 or 2 sessions. So we're having one meeting from 12 to 1 and another meeting from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. Hopefully gives people a better opportunity to participate. And with that, we're working to ensure that these meetings are both informative and interactive. Next thing to note, we launched our online community input survey last Friday, and we've already seen a couple of people complete that. One change we'll note, initially at the last meeting, we discussed distributing paper copies of the survey to different locations throughout the county. We did have some discussions afterward, and we decided to instead develop a flyer that notes that residents can contact us if they need a hard copy of that. And these flyers were distributed last week to post offices, senior centers, and some other key locations throughout the county. And we'll be continuing to spread the word about that through Facebook and other means in the days and weeks to come. One last thing to note with the community engagement portion. Yeah, thanks. We developed an additional comment form on our project website. And this is for people who have a specific question or issue. They can send that directly to both Clay County and MetroCog, so we can get that logged in. And then just last, we scheduled our next study review committee meeting for Friday, March 5th. At this meeting, we'll look to share information from the community profile, which details existing conditions and different projections and trends that we've looked at, as well as discussing some additional community engagement meeting needs. But that's all I have for tonight. I'm happy to take any questions at this time.
I don't hear any questions coming, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I just want to thank Adam and MetroCog for all the hard work that they've put in so far on our comprehensive plan process.
Yes, they've done quite a bit. Their logo will come out a little bit better too.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Any other comments? Anybody else? All right, thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Do you have any comments on that, Matt? Before we go to new business?
No, all I want to say is just to spread the word and encourage folks to attend. I can send you all copies of that flyer, and there is a dedicated webpage for this project as well. It's currently up on our planning and zoning website, but we're looking at probably by the end of this week, just getting it out on our county spotlight, and Facebook and Twitter and, all those. We're looking to get it on Twitter, Bill, so you can get access to it, because I know you're tweeting quite a bit, so.
Don't hold your breath on that one, for sure. It's an accomplishment just for me to figure out this this, so.
I'd
the
say you're a
Twitter-
master of this. You've got this down.
Yeah, baloney. As long as there's directions, I got it. Okay. New business? You got anything for us, Matt?
Nothing new to report at this time, unless anyone else has anything.
Mr. Chair, this is Jenny. Just a comment that the Clay County Board did approve the development that we had recommended to that board.
No, thank you, Jenny.
Saw that in the paper. Saw that in somewhere in the paper or something that they had approved. Oh, that was on the forum website, I believe, that they had approved that. So, yeah.
It was in the FM Extra, too.
Oh, that was on the Inform too on the website. That had been approved. I just got one unrelated question. I guess. Sounds like the vaccines are coming a little bit faster here, supposedly in the next month or two. So hopefully there'll be some advancement on that.
I can maybe speak to that just briefly. Yes, the Clay County Public Health has been getting an increased amount of shipment, and they're administering everything that they have gotten. And there is on the county website kind of a page and a hotline in terms of getting on a list if you haven't been able to get on one. Otherwise, they can work with you.
I see, I don't know if it ran around here, but there was just a thing in the news yesterday somewhere that CVS was going to start giving them too. So if anybody hasn't jumped on something, CVS might have something in their area. I don't know. I didn't look at it and see if it's going to be in this area. Walmart is giving them in this area in Moorhead. Anyway, that being said, is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So move, Ezra.
Is there a second?
Second, Steve Lindass.
Got a motion and a second to close to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor, Kurt?
Aye.
Ezra?
Aye.
Andrea?
Aye.
Jenny?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Joel?
Aye.
Kurt? Steve?
Aye.
Warrenson? Very good. Hey, have a good night. Have a good night, folks, and good month. Take care of yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.